What is up, everybody? Today, hopefully, is the day that the engine is going back into Penelope. Before we do that, I want to just do kind of a walk around on the engine, the car itself, and what we got going on because, of course, we created another problem when we were doing everything. So we've got to take care of something first before we put the engine in. But let's take a look at the engine, look at the car, and then fingers crossed we're getting the engine in, getting it fired up. We've got to finish breaking the cam in a little bit. I think Brian, the engine builder, said we need to do about another 10 minutes of run time at 2,000, 3,000 RPM. So we've got to do that once it gets in. But let's take a look at the engine, take a look at the car. So here is the engine all cleaned up and ready to go in. Granted, I just kind of painted the stock exhaust that was on the car. It was actually in pretty good shape. All the engine tin got powder coated, and it looks really good. We've got everything hooked up, ready to roll. The engine builder had given me new spark plug wires, but I put these ones back on. These were ones that came from ISP West. I like that they're the bent over style. Yeah, it's looking good. It's ready to roll. We redid wiring. These boots also came from ISP West. Pretty cool. I like these. The clamps that were used on these ones were pretty neat. Something I thought was really cool as we were putting everything together. I didn't show us putting all this stuff back together because it's kind of boring, honestly, but something that was cool. All of these clamps are the original Volkswagen clamps. I mean, still have VW stamped in them. Everything was really cool. There was one. So there's this pipe right here that we couldn't really figure out. It was bolted up there, and part of it just goes in between, the head. Weren't sure what that was. I put it out there. Everyone said it was a preheat tube for the intake, which it was. The reason why we didn't know what it was because my car had the AC compressor would be sitting right here. So normally the air cleaner would have an air horn that came out right here and actually would have a boot that would hook up to the body shell. And that tube originally would have hooked up into that setup. Now mine, because of the AC, which would have been a dealer installed AC, they pretty much hack that air horn off the air cleaner and rotate it around so it's facing this way. So, I might actually show you a couple pictures of that tube just because, it was something we couldn't figure out for a minute and we're wondering why and where it was going to and, whatever, but it's looking good and I'm getting excited. Well, let's take a look at Penelope really quick. So we've got everything kind of cleaned up and degreased in here a little bit. We put new mounts in already, which was a little bit of a pain. While we were doing that, we actually tore this CV boot. So that's the problem we caused. We're gonna go ahead and just put some new CV boots in. These are the split ones, and we'll show you what we're gonna do with there. You can see this side had been replaced at one point with a split one already, but we're gonna go ahead and do both. Drain the fluid out of the trans and fill it back up. Other thing we did, place the throwout bearing. But we're pretty much ready to go. I mean, Trav cleaned up some of the wiring. Everything is right there, ready to go in. So we've just got to get it up, replace those CV boots, and drain and refill the trans. One thing I want to say, we'll take a look. Everyone says you should make sure that the fill plug is loose before you go ahead and drain the fluid out of the drain plug, because I guess those fill plugs have a tendency to freeze up. So if you drain all your fluid out and then can't get the plug out for the fill plug, you're kind of screwed because you wouldn't be able to get fluid back in. So we'll take a look at that as well. So real quick, we already ran into something that is going to cause us a little bit of an issue. So Brian, that built the engine for me, put one of the studs in the case here And on this car, this one actually was a bolt through the trans. The problem comes into the fact that the bolt actually hits the back of the case and I can't get it all the way out. So the question is, do we cut that bolt so we can get it out, or do we try and put the stud or pull the stud out, which quite possibly was Loctited in? And so that sounds like a bad idea to me. So I'm guessing first things first, we're going to end up cutting that bolt and trying to pull it out of the case or out of the trans so we can use that. The reason why it caught me off guard, I was thinking about the nuts, and most of the bugs are studs like this. Most of the Volkswagens I've dealt with actually have been studs in the lower section of the case with bolts up through the upper section. So just one more thing that we've got to deal with. It's all those little things that end up slowing you down and making it so you can't move along as quickly as you'd like to. But we'll get it figured out, and hopefully it goes a little bit smoother from here on out. I know Trav and I are ready to get this thing driving down the road, so hopefully we can make that happen today.
Little toasty?
Little toasty.
Well, that was just a stud.
It was a stud. Turns out that was actually a stud that pulled out of the block originally. So the nut just stayed on. So, I mean, I guess we might not have had to have cut it off, but for what we needed to do, it works. At least we can pull that nut off maybe and be able to use it, but we already found another one, so we're good. All right.
Yeah, there's two of them.
So real quick, there is the fill plug for the transmission. This one was a 17 millimeter Allen head, pretty ginormous, and we were already able to crack that one loose, so we know the fill plug is gonna come out. The reason why I say crack that loose first and everyone else does is, like I said, just to make sure you're going to be able to fill your transmission back up when the time comes. So Trav's actually pulling out the drain plug right now, and it also was the same size, that 17 millimeter. As he drops it in the oil. Way to go, Trav. Alright, so I just wanted to show you really quick what that axle side looks like on the trans without the boot on there, just so you could get an idea on what you're looking at if you have to do these yourself. We cut the old boot off. You know, this one was the side that had a replacement boot with all the screws through it. There's no sense in taking the time to unscrew those. It was just way easier to just cut the boot off, pull it off. So now we're gonna assemble the new boot up in there, and we'll move on to the other side. Won't show you that one because you get the idea. So here's our new boot out of the package. You can see it's got ribs and channels in it that you're going to want to make sure are lined up once we get it on there. The other thing is, you know, it's just screws and those channels that are holding everything in, but you're going to want to make sure that those screws are up and not down, because this isn't going to seal super perfect, and you don't want that at an angle where fluid could leak out. So you're going to want to make sure all of that's up in the car. So we've got the new boot kits in. Found that it was easier to pretty much slide the boot in and get all of those started and then pull it over the top side to get the big clamps on. And we got both sides buttoned up, kind of a pain, but hopefully that makes it a little easier. And I think we're about ready to top the trans off and then get the engine put in, hopefully. We've been fiddling around with a bunch of crap. I blame Trav. It's all your fault.
Definitely my fault. Don't poke a hole in the boot when you're trying to replace the transmission mounts.
Definitely happens. What is up, everybody? Trav and I are beat. The engine's in the car. It's all the small odds and end bullcrap that just kicked our butt. I mean, if you could see my arms from reaching in the engine compartment, it has just beat us to death today. In the 105-degree weather with some humidity, didn't help at all. And of course, we get the battery in the car after it being on the charger all day, and the 6-volt battery, she's just done. So we're gonna jump start it, see if we can get fired up, and hopefully finish breaking in the cam, and then I'm gonna have to get a new battery. So let's see if we can get this thing fired up. We got gas. We got gas. You can smell it. Come on. Well, she's not even trying right now, so we're gonna do some playing for a minute and see what we can figure out. All right, so Travis and I need to rework some wiring. Apparently, we think it's gonna fire up now. After doing some testing, we found, now mind you, we actually used the factory wiring for the most part. We put new ends on it, cleaned it up, and put some braided wiring covers over it. And if you see the length of this wire here, this wire fit perfectly to the oil pressure switch, whereas this short wire here fit perfectly to the coil. And that's how we hooked it up. You know, we weren't 100% sure how it was. It's been a while, right? But we hooked it up the way the wires fit the car perfectly. And guess what? They were backwards. So I think it's gonna fire up now. I'm not gonna lie, my camera has overheated more than once, so we're gonna fire it up, and that could be the end of the video because I don't want to lose the video from the camera overheating. So we'll step it back a bit. I think it's gonna fire. Trav and I are gonna finish breaking the cam in, and then that's gonna be it for this mileage unknown.
It's got enough juice to go.
Sounds good.
Smell the exhaust burning off.
Huh?
Smell the exhaust burning off.
Definitely sounds better than it did stop. We've got a little tuning still. Sounds good.
Does sound good.
Sounds good. Definitely got a little bit of tuning left on the carbs. that was something we had to play with. These are actually pretty simple. I don't know how well we're going to get them dialed in, and who knows, maybe down the line it'll get a carb upgrade. But I really wanted that stock air cleaner, because when you look in the engine compartment on a Type 3, there's not a whole lot there to see other than wire mess and the air cleaner. And the stock air cleaner looks good in them. I think we've got the cam finished, broke in. And, you know, the reason why the engine builder and us, we did it in increments. I mean, it's 100 and whatever here in Arizona, and air-cooled Volkswagens don't like sitting still revving at 2,000 to 2,500 RPMs for 30 minutes straight. So we've got it broke in. Next time, I don't know that we'll even show it, but we'll end up doing an oil change on it, kind of putting it the rest of the way back together. We're going to go for a cruise and see how this new engine actually feels. To me, when I rev up, clearly it sounds better, and you can hear it has more performance than what the stock 1600, worn out old 1600 had. So I'm super excited. I'm feeling beat, and I'm about to go inside and be lazy.